Good morning, and welcome to the first meeting of this exciting annual meeting of the Biomedical Engineering Society. And this is a first this year, so we do have this career connection events that will last all day, all year. And then there are wonderful activities for you to be able to decide at the end of the day if really BME is the right career for you. I know it is, but we're going to make sure that you understand all that. We have a full day of exciting speakers, and we need to give a big round of applause to Terry Young because she's the one who planned all that along with Lisa Waples. So I'm Martine Laberge, and I'm the moderator of this session. I've been fortunate to be asked to do this, and then to give you a bit of introduction of what is the meaning of being a biomedical engineering. So this is our session today. As you see that, the objectives, in an hour, you really know, going to find out if you want to go in industry, academics, or if you want to do something else. And then we understand that in our department, I'm a department chair at Clemson University. I've been doing that for more than 12 years. And I do understand that you're struggling through the concept of what am I going to do after my degree. It also has a stigma, isn't it? But I can guarantee you that you are better than any other engineers at your school. You're stronger than the mechanical engineers. You're smarter than the electrical engineers. And you actually have more skills than any of them. This is the most difficult major that someone could enroll in. And you know that because you're really in the midst of it. So you're suffering for 4 years, and you're in grad school, getting a PhD, maybe early career, and then definitely you have what it takes to be the future leaders of the United States and the global enterprise in the medical device industry. So I'm going to give a pitch on the Biomedical Engineering Society. Why should you be a member of BMES? I guarantee that you were made being a member or told to do so you could get the reduced registration fee. So we're all members now. Keep your membership. So the society has this thing, hashtag BMES for success. And then this program is to give you leadership skills for career development and advancement. No other society, professional society, does that. So we have hashtag BMES for success for students. We have it for early career, and we also have that for full members. So make sure you keep your membership along. Why is BMES value proposition? You're going to see that today. Take notes about this, about networking. You will not get a job unless you have full list of contacts. In my days, we call that a Rolodex. So for you, it's a list of contacts, people you can count on. Give your business cards at this meeting. Shake hands. Make yourself known. When you give a presentation, go find out the people who ask you questions so you get to be known. Showcase your research. All of you are doing research. This is what the BME do well. They do research well. They're thinkers. They are entrepreneurs and leaders. Professional development. BMES gives you webinars that your school may not have on topics that will be very important to make you successful. Great experiences. Some of you might have participated in the Call to College event yesterday. BME idea. Great thing to do to give you against leadership skills. And then you have recognitions. So Terry asked me to say, what does a BME do? I bet you have to say that to many people. They ask you, biomedical engineer, what do you do? So it's still a stigma out there, but when you tell them that you are the reason why they can have a life that is longer, happier, and better because of better health, they will listen to you. And in order to do this, you need to have so much skills. You call that split brains. You're half life sciences and half applied sciences. And you combine all this. You are the interface. You're basically the bridge between two very difficult fields. So as you all know, we use that in all our departments to kind of beg for money, resources, to make sure our industry collaborators know about you. CNN Money has repetitively for many years declared that biomedical engineering was the #1 profession, and then in terms of career as well. So what are your skills? If you look at this there, you know, engaged, motivated scholars, innovators, enablers, opportunity seekers, entrepreneurials, and agents of change. Aren't you all this? Look down, and I think this definitely depicts exactly what all of you are. You're strong engineers, you have very good bench skills, you're outstanding speakers. It takes a lot of skills to be able to convince a physician that your research project is worth being looked at, that you need to make them understand what you're doing in some kind of vocabulary that is not demeaning to them, but also that makes them appreciate what you do. You're flexible. Our field changes so much. We're still learning about it. You're adaptable because of that, and you have the greatest people skills that someone could have. And now, as we know, biomedical engineering is very much global, so you have that for there. So, keeping that in mind, I would say this is basically your profile as being the ultimate agents of change in society. We're going to start our program, and we're very proud to have 3 distinguished speakers today, and we're going to keep this slide out there, and then we're going to cover academics, industry, and recruitment. How is it you talk to someone who knows how to find you a job? We're going to have a session for questions and answers. So our first speaker is Dr. Jordan Grady. He's Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. He received his BS in Biomedical Engineering, just like you, and Chemical Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University. He completed the PhD degree in Biological Engineering at MIT and also followed that with a postdoc there as well. He has numerous publications, and he is an entrepreneur. He has also patents and then is involved in economic development. He followed the tenure track successfully at Johns Hopkins. I was told that he's a wonderful teacher, highly charismatic, and that he likes students as well. So when asked the most important thing that he likes about his day-to-day job, Dr. Green answered, interacting with students and come up with new discoveries. So please help me welcome Dr. Green as our first speaker.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, and good morning to everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this morning. I thought I'd start by just talking about my career path. So it wasn't that long ago I was sitting in an auditorium listening to speakers about the future possibilities in a career in engineering. So when I started from high school, I was interested in math and science. I wanted to apply it in some way, so I went in engineering. But I initially went into chemical engineering. So biomedical engineering was still being developed as a field. So at a lot of places you couldn't major in biomedical engineering exclusively yet. And so I was interested in that. But then something happens, kind of career type things, where then I heard from alumni that came back in chemical engineering and successful alumni, and I asked them, well, what was the thing that you've done that you're most proud of or most exciting, from your job? And so I'd hear things like, well, we're developing a new toothpaste, and then there's 2 different colors, one on the inside, one on the outside. When you squeeze the tube, it's important to have both flow at the same rate, because if one squirts out and the other one, then it gets messy and people don't like it. I thought, wow, after all this school, if that's the crowning achievement, I want to do something where I can help people and make a difference. And so at my university, they started to offer biomedical engineering as a minor, or you could do it as a double major if you were majoring in engineering already. So I thought that sounded really good, and I started to take more classes in biology and bioengineering, and it was really exciting to me. And so I also started to do some undergraduate research where I did research in biomedical engineering in a chemical engineering lab. And that was really exciting to me. And so for graduate school, I thought, well, I definitely want to get my PhD then in biological engineering. And why I wanted to go to graduate school was also part of things I was exploring as an undergrad, where I interned at a company with a bachelor, when I was working towards my bachelor's, and I saw what other people with bachelor's degrees did, and I really wanted to have the kind of position where I'd be more independent and be able to sort of set the goals more with what I would be working on, and it seemed like I needed graduate school to do that. And so I applied to graduate school in biological engineering, and I really loved biomedical engineering, and so I wanted to continue doing that research through. And so following the PhD, I did a short postdoc and then looked for faculty positions, and I've been at Johns Hopkins University now for the last 8 years. And so my primary appointment is biomedical engineering, but one of the great things about biomedical engineers is that you guys can really do almost anything. And so in terms of other departments and the kinds of work that they do, you can see biomedical engineers working in just about every other field. So for example, some of the work we do is in material science, and so I now have a joint appointment in material science and different material science students in my lab. And then I'm in the School of Medicine, and then I found I was working on different problems in the brain, and so along the way I now have a joint appointment in neurosurgery. I wouldn't think be a neurosurgeon, but I follow them into the lab and we work together on problems because the clinicians know the problems really well, and then as an engineer, a biomedical engineer, you can come up with those solutions. And then also now joint appointments in ophthalmology and in oncology, and we do a lot of work in new kinds of delivery systems and therapies in the eye, and then for oncology. So I think it just goes to show how a BME can be comfortable in a lot of different fields, and a lot of fields are then looking to BMEs to come up with the answers and solutions to the challenges that they have. You know, whether it's a new type of therapy, a new type of device, a new type of diagnostic, a new computational tool, a health app, you know, the discovery in the next generation of medicines, personalized medicines, nanomedicine, gene therapy, things like that. And so it's a really exciting place to be. So as an academic now, what's my day-to-day life? So one thing I do is teach, and so I teach undergraduates and graduate students. So if it's something that you like to do to teach, that's something you can even TA or help with peer-to-peer mentoring while an undergrad or as a grad student to TA and sort of see how you like that. And if it's something you like, then teaching could be a really great path. And there's all different types of professors. So you could, if you really like teaching, but you don't want to spend as much time doing research, or you don't want to worry about writing grants to fund the lab and those kinds of things, there's a lot of really wonderful programs you could go into as a professor where your responsibilities are mostly with just teaching. And then when summers come, you can take summers off sometimes, and you can have different kinds of scheduling. And then the other extreme, you could have a situation where you're a professor, but you actually don't even teach, or maybe you teach one lecture a year, and you really just run a research lab. And then there's a lot of positions that are in between, where maybe you teach one class a semester, and then you run a research lab with students and postdocs. And so there's that whole spectrum there for, you know, if you want to go in academia that you could span. And I think what's really exciting with academia is you never stop learning new things. And so you might get to the end of the textbook, and then you go to conferences like this and read journal articles and learn what comes next. And then you, in your own lab, discover what comes next. With your students and fellows, you get to do that discovery. And then as engineers, you then get to develop new solutions and new technologies. And so that could be inventing, you know, a cure for cancer one day, maybe with immunotherapies or stem cells or technologies like that. And what comes along the way sometimes then is you invent new things. So maybe you invent these new technologies, and then you could have an opportunity through the university to patent those, to work with companies to license them. Or in some cases, if it's real early stage and there isn't a big company that, you know, is dying to license this because they see this so risky, sometimes what academics can do is work in a team to then create a small company to develop that technology further, to the point that then it gets really exciting to investors or other companies. And so I did that with another professor, that together we started a company, Asclepics Therapeutics, where it was technologies from both of our labs in BME at Hopkins. That was Dr. Alexander Popple and myself. And then so we were able to develop a small business in the startup space that was at Hopkins, and then hire some employees, and then get different kinds of grants. There's special grants from the government called SBIRs that can go to companies. And so a startup could also be really fun if you like new things and wearing different kinds of hats, because there aren't a lot of people in the startup, so you could have different roles, and it's exciting. And then you know, see that grow. So even if you choose to be an academic, it doesn't mean you can't do some things that are related to the commercial side or working with companies. But anything that's done like that has to be managed by your university's conflict of interest policies, and so I'm also disclosing that right now. But it's a really great occupation in that you have a lot of flexibility. And then the other thing you get to do is interact with other postdocs, grad students, and in terms of mentoring, in terms of talking about new ideas in science. You teach them things, you learn a lot from them, and I think it's a really fun atmosphere. if you want to know a little bit about my lab, specifically what we do is we develop new kinds of biomaterials and enabling technologies like degradable nanotechnologies for intracellular delivery of DNA or siRNA, or cell therapies with stem cells or immune cells, or we use artificial antigen-presenting cells to activate the immune system to go after different targets like cancer, and then some other sort of specialized drug delivery, things like controlled release in the eye for age-related macular degeneration, or treatments in the brain for glioblastoma. And all of those things are done by students, and it's great to work in that team, and then also the team with other collaborators. So I guess that's the other side I would say, is that a lot of, if you go into academia, a lot of what you do as you go through it is it's less and less time on the bench and more time writing and reading and reviewing. So even some of the humanity classes that might not be your favorite right now, you actually do use those skills a lot when you leave school. And then it's really a team thing. It's not one person. It's rare you look in the biomedical engineering literature to find a paper that's published where there's one author. It's not like maybe theoretical math that might be like that, or it's something where it's a team. And so to work with other collaborators, other professors in other disciplines to do interdisciplinary research and clinicians, and then with different students all working together. So if you like working as a team, it's a really great place to be too.
We're going to hold questions until the end of our speakers. So our following speaker is Dr. Nicole Hurley. Nicole is a senior product manager for the global aortic franchise at Medtronic. She's a graduate of Georgia Tech, where she received a PhD in bioengineering, and also a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. She did a postdoc fellowship at the University of Arizona Cancer Center, and she worked at Gore as a product specialist, became a global product specialist there for 7 years, and recently she was recruited by Medtronic. What a transition. Nicole is known for her sense of details, ongoing personality, and outstanding leadership skills. When asked about what she likes the most about her day-to-day job, Nicole answered the fact that every day is different, not boring at all. Please welcome Nicole Hurley.
Hi, thank you. Just to get an idea, how many in the room are undergrads? Okay, that's fantastic to see the growing group of BME majors, but how about grad students? All right, okay, good. So there's a good mix. So how many of you started off thinking you want to go to med school? Anyone? Yeah, okay. So that was me. And so I think that is actually a common career path, is that you want to do something medical, and then you get into the pre-med crowd, and maybe this isn't exactly what I want to do, right? So for me, I became more interested in the behind-the-scenes part of medical. And so actually, just one correction. So I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. I'm from Austin, so I'm sure there was probably something in my profile about being at the UT Austin. But anyways, I went to UC Berkeley, and I started off as a pre-med. And in my junior year, I decided to transfer to this new degree called bioengineering. And so actually at Berkeley, it wasn't even accredited, which I assured my parents it's going to be okay. I think a Berkeley degree in bioengineering will still put me on a career path that I'll get a job someday. So I transferred over, and really at that time, there were no bioengineering classes, right? I took all of my classes in the traditional electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering. And so when I graduated, I felt like I knew a little bit about a lot of things, but was not specialized in anything. And so for me, the career path to go to grad school was the logical next step. And so from Berkeley, I went to Georgia Tech. And for those who are in grad school, I assume we're very similar, that you probably don't know what you want to do when you graduate, right? You've spent a lot of time in a lab, and that's what you do all day, so that should be super interesting to you. But there's this industry thing that you hear about, and that could be interesting too, right? So for me, that's where I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do until really my third year of graduate school, when I realized that my research was moving towards a product that could be used eventually, right? So everything in grad school is in that at least 10 years out time frame. But I was gravitating towards creating a product that could potentially be used in the field. So my research was towards a drug-eluting stent, and I used that research to get more experience actually being out in the field. So actually I worked with a cardiologist on my research. I think a good piece of advice is to start getting that type of experience now if you do want to move towards industry. Working with clinicians is just great experience. Just interacting with clinicians is different from working with engineers, and there's a different language that you speak with physicians. So decided I was going to move towards industry, and so actually at this conference is where I talked to somebody at Gore. So I'm going to highly encourage you to go to the career fair and talk to the people there. I actually walked around the career fair, thought, it's Medtronic, actually. Medtronic looks cool. I think that there was, maybe like Boston Scientific was there. That looks good. And Gore makes fabrics. Why would I want to talk to the Gore-Tex people? And so I walked out. And my career advisor actually said, go back and talk to Gore. And so that's where I learned about the product specialist role. And so at Gore, they have a somewhat unique role called a product specialist. And so in that role, you wear a lot of different hats. Excuse me, Gore also calls it the product mother. So you have a product, which is your baby, and everything from R&D through to commercialization falls within your responsibility. So you don't do all those things, right? There's regulatory, there's sales, there's marketing, all those functional groups, excuse me. All those functional groups, thank you, are there to help you, but you are ultimately responsible for making sure your baby makes it into the real world, right? So you are there from the beginning through to the end. And so for me, I spent 8 years at Gore. My product was actually a couple of products. First one, very early R&D, and then I moved to a very commercialized product. So it's actually Gore's #1 grossing medical product. It treats abdominal aortic aneurysm, and I was globally responsible for that product. And so to me, I really like the global role. I have been very fortunate to see a lot of the world. So that's in going to conferences, training physicians, training reps, helping physicians with what they present on the podium. There's a lot of different capacities of what I do when I travel, but it's really been a great experience. So I did that product for the last 5 years or so and learned a ton. I can't say enough great things about Gore. The people are fantastic, super ethical company. I would highly recommend it. But for me, I felt like I was no longer being challenged. I wasn't learning, and I really wanted to grow. And so the Medtronic opportunity, there's some luck in what happens, sort of the right place, right time. I mentioned to somebody who actually used to work at Gore that my husband and I are possibly looking to relocate, and I'm looking for maybe a new opportunity, possibly in the Bay Area. So I had 2 30-minute phone calls with a director and a VP. At the end of the second conversation, they said, can you fly out this week? I'm like, well, actually, I'm out of town. So the next week I flew out. I evidently made the final interviews, so the next week I actually had a job. So suddenly, my husband and I were looking at each other of what just happened. So he had also a job offer as well. So within a month, we had sold our house and moved to San Francisco, and I now work for Medtronic. So different experience. Medtronic is a very large publicly owned company versus Gore is a small private company. But in a lot of ways, very similar, and I can answer more questions on that. But my role now is, so the title is Global Aortic Franchise. So Medtronic purchased a company last June. So for $120 million, they bought another company in the Bay Area. And they brought it in and realized they didn't know how to market it in conjunction with the rest of their portfolio. So my role is to, in some ways, relaunch the product in Europe. So it's CE and FDA approved. So relaunch in Europe and then launch it globally. So we're actively seeking regulatory approval around the world. So again, that brings in the travel to those places to train them, and then also get Europe up to speed. And so that focus right now is really on Europe. So, excuse me, I think I've been to Europe twice a month since I started in January, doing various road shows, so taking US physicians with me to Europe, and we travel a region to help promote the product. The product's actually it's a new therapy. So I'm actually developing it's a therapy awareness. So having physicians and hospitals recognize, what is this product, how does it benefit my patients, helping them understand the health economics behind the device. So there's no reimbursement, so how do we sell the product that way? And then, of course, marketing it, right? How does it fit into the overall aortic portfolio? So different experiences between the two companies. I now work from home. So the Medtronic I'm based out of is in Santa Rosa. I realize there's a big one down the road. But I'm out of Santa Rosa, so I do go into that office, but I am out of my house, except when, of course, I'm on the road, which is probably 60% of the time right now. So that's probably another decision you have to think about, is whether you like to travel or not. In industry, you absolutely do not have to travel. I like to travel, so it's okay with me. But travel does it gets tiring. So it's something to think about. So I think that's pretty much my story of how I got where I am.
It's a great story. And now we know about industry and academics. We're going to find out how we can get there. So we're going to have Joe Tringali. He is our recruiter. Joe is the principal at Tringali & Associates. This is a recruitment firm that serves the Boston area in life sciences. This is a company founded 28 years ago and maybe more. And then this is the major focus of his portfolio is on strategic and recruitment and development. He has more than 500 plus LinkedIn meets. After that, they don't count. He's highly eloquent, motivational speaker. Joe is highly sought as a guest speaker at many conferences in the medical field, including ours. His competency are highly relevant to BME coaching for careers. So he's a graduate of the University of New Hampshire. When asked about what he likes about his day-to-day job, Joe answered, "I'm paid to do treasure hunting." So welcome, Joe.
Thank you all for being here today, and thanks for getting up so early. That's much appreciated by all of us. So let me tell you a little bit about what I do, and let me tell you how I got there. Sometimes it's an accident, and it's been an accident for me. I was going to be a biology teacher, cell biology. That was the plan many, many years ago. At the time that I graduated, excuse me, it was a very tough market. I really was having a tough time even getting interviews. And true story, no word of a lie, I ended up running into a friend in a bar who said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for a job." He said, "Well, I just started working for this recruiting firm. I don't quite know what we do yet because I've only been there a week, but we're hiring." Great. So it's a true story. I call, I make an appointment, they welcome me in, I get the job. First week I said I made a mistake. Second week I said I made a mistake. Third week I said, it's not that bad. And it was really an accident. If you had asked me many years ago, what are you going to be doing, I never would have said recruiter. I'm very fortunate, by the way. I ended up in something that I completely love. I do it 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, weekends. You can ask my wife about that. Can you get off that phone, Joe? So sometimes the best laid plans don't always come to pass. It doesn't mean you won't end up in something that you love more than you even thought you might love it. So that's how I ended up in this business. What I do now for clients is I recruit, and I always differentiate between hiring somebody and recruiting somebody. To me, the difference is in the economics of the supply pool. So if a client says to me, hey Joe, we're looking to hire a recent grad, bachelor's level in biology, for example, I say, you don't want my help, you don't need my help, and chances are they aren't going to call me anyway. Why? Because they're posting that job and they're going to have an influx of resumes. There's more supply of those candidates. I won't say then there is demand, but the point is these clients have options. They have people responding to them. It does not mean that you're not going to get a job. It means that the first job, and Nicole and I talked about this, the first job will probably be the more challenging job for you because of the economics of the situation. More people leaving undergraduate programs, graduate programs, looking to industry. And I'm only talking about industry jobs at this point. So you will get that job. The point is it's not going to be probably through somebody like myself. The analogy I make is that I am the plumber, and I mean that in a good way. I don't want to call the plumber. There are times when I have to call the plumber. Same with these organizations. They don't want to, the last thing they want to say is, call Joe, we need some help with this recruiting issue. It's usually for a position that is so unique or where there is so much more demand for that skill set that not only do they not hire somebody, they're not even getting resumes to look at, believe it or not. Very different than the recent grad who's applying everywhere. So go back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, hiring versus recruiting. Hiring means we've got 300 resumes, we're going to pick 10, bring them in, and we're going to choose one. We're going to hire somebody. Recruiting means we need to tell a compelling story to get somebody to sit across the table from us to hear our story. That is the difference. It's all in the economics. My job is to get 2, 3, 4 people to sit across the table from the client to have that conversation. They're not looking for jobs, usually. They've already had 5 calls that day from other recruiters about other jobs. So my job is to be able to convince them that maybe you want to explore this opportunity for these reasons. Recruiting versus hiring. So that's what I do for a living. That's what when I said earlier that it's treasure hunting. That's what I do. I'm on the phone all day. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm writing emails. My job is to get somebody with a specific background, and the more specific, the better. The more details a client can give me, the better, because I can hone in on that skill set. Then to make those calls to generate 2 or 3 people that are willing to have a conversation about that opportunity. My business is all about timing. I talk to somebody on Monday, and they don't want to hear from me ever again. Tuesday, I happen to call them again. You know what? I just had a conversation with my boss. I'm not sure I want to be here for the long term, given some of the things that are happening. Tell me about that job again, Joe. It's all timing. So that's what I do for a living. My job is to get candidates that are not necessarily in an active search and manage that process, to get them to the table, to have a conversation, and then to manage the client, and I think I mentioned this to you, Nicole, to go back to the client and say, look, Sally is willing to have a conversation with you. She fits all the criteria that you want. She's not necessarily looking. She's willing to have a conversation with you. If you like her background, and you may not, but if you like her background, understand that she as a candidate has more leverage than you do as an employer right now. Why? Because she's getting 10 calls a week. So I also manage the client. This is what's important to Sally. She said to me she doesn't want to travel as much. If you can accommodate that, let her know. So I'm a little bit of a matchmaker. Nobody should take a job because somebody like me called them. That's the wrong reason to take the job. They should take the job because they were willing to have the conversation and the client was able to tell a compelling story that satisfies your needs at this particular point in your career. And your hot buttons are going to change over your career. So that's a little bit about what I do for a living. I often get asked, I'll say one more thing, I often get asked when I go to these meetings, can you help me find my first job? As much as I would love to, as much as my little wife would love me to, it's probably not going to happen, not because we don't want to, but because, again, somebody like me is probably going to be an obstacle to you in your first job. Why? Again, go back to what I said. They're getting resumes for the recent grads, whether it's graduate level, PhD, master's, or undergraduate. They're getting, when a resume comes from me, the clients pay me. There's a fee attached to my submittal of a resume. That's how I feed my family. If they already have 300 candidates for free, and you come in and there's a fee attached, you're going to fall at the bottom of the pile. So I say that in fairness to you. Understand the dynamics of your job search. If you're getting calls from recruiters, just ask them, have you been authorized to work on this? Which says to me that they're not getting the candidate flow that they want. So what will happen is you'll get that first job, and then people like me will be tracking you down. Trust me, we'll find you. Because that's how we feed our families. That's what I do.
Wonderful, isn't that exciting careers? So when you come to the microphone, please tell us who you are, where you're from, and now we're entertaining questions. I'm sure you have many now. So I'm going to start just to break the ice. So Joe, how do we get on the list of a recruiter?
How do you get on the list? So what I do all day is to find people. Again, so at any given time, and I work alone, at any given time I'm working on 3 or 4 particular projects. They're all very different. They're all in the life sciences. It could be a director of regulatory affairs. It could be a VP of marketing. I am going to find individuals primarily through networking. I do a lot on LinkedIn, so I have a very updated LinkedIn profile that talks to the kind of job that you may be looking for. That's how we're going to identify you. Keywords. So I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to assume that by reading a publication you're going to fit this job that I'm going to be working on starting next week. So keep an updated profile. You can certainly send a resume to a recruiter, but with the understanding that he or she is probably not going to have something for you for your first job. We will keep it. We'll chase you down in 2 years once you've been at Gore for a couple of years or wherever it may be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll start with this microphone, and then we'll go to the other.
Hello, my name is Jacob Caldwell. I'm a senior biomedical engineer from University of Buffalo. My question's for Nicole. So after leaving graduate school in that heavy research space, moving to Gore, what was it like still having the research part under your product specialist, but gaining and transitioning to the skills necessary for travel and commercialization, marketing?
So it's actually a really great question because it can seem daunting to move from a world of research, and that's all you know, into a world of industry where you're suddenly supposed to understand the commercial side of a product. So actually specific to Gore, the product specialist role is they recruit PhD students. So they will say in the rec that it is highly recommended, but that highly recommended means essentially required. So they like to hire PhD students for that role because in many ways, managing a product is like managing your PhD thesis, right? You have to figure out where your resources are in order to get your project done. Your advisor's there to help you, just in the same way your teammates at Gore will help you, but it's your baby. You need to make sure that baby makes it to the market. So a lot of the skills you learn aren't, it's not about your research. What did you studied a drug-eluting stent. It doesn't matter. It's the skills you learned in terms of time management, project management. Those are the valuable skills that you need at any job, and that's what they're looking for. So even though you don't necessarily have the product knowledge, you'll learn that. I mean, you guys are all smart. You're here because you're BME majors. You'll learn it. It's the skill set of how do you then apply what you've learned to whatever your new role is.
Thank you, Nicole.
Hi, I'm Janelle Adams. I'm a sophomore at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And this question is for Jordan or Nicole. You talked about interacting with clinicians and how different that is. I was just wondering what the biggest challenges you face and how you go about overcoming that.
And just to be clear, you mean for our role right now, or if you as a student wanted to interact more with
Both,
clinicians?
actually, if you'd be willing to answer.
Sure. So I think something you heard all of us talk about, and something that's important with you and all of you when you look at your next stage, whether it's grad school or going right into industry or med school, whatever it might be, is that networking and talking to other people is just so important. And sometimes it's something where it leads to something right away. Sometimes it's something that sits there for a little bit, but then when you interact again, and now it leads to this next big thing. So so one of it's just networking. So it's the kind of thing where maybe it's a BME seminar that's going on in your school, and then there's certain clinicians or a resident or someone is there because they're interested in the topic and they're coming in from another field, or vice versa. There's maybe a talk going on in the cancer center at your school, and you go to that talk, and then you see a room full of clinicians, and maybe you talk to the one sitting next to you. And so you as a student or as a faculty member. And so by having those connections, or things like here, like there's different panels that will have other clinical people, and so you can go talk to them, or at receptions, so it's basically the first stage is just talking and seeing if you have a similar interest. And then if you have a similar interest, it's usually exciting to see sort of what's at that interface. And so it might be, so for me, it might be, I've had MD, PhD students in my lab, and sometimes they're the ideal person to be at this interface. Sometimes it's mechanisms of funding. So the Coulter Foundation, for example, has different grants that used to be national and then became different. Schools would have these sort of internal programs, but it would have to be a project where you get $100,000 of funding, and it'd be a project that would have a BME faculty, a clinical faculty working together on a problem that's translational. And so that's a good driver for both faculty is, well, here's the funds, and then so that can pay for a student or a postdoc to do that work and the supplies. And so similarly, the federal government has programs to encourage those kinds of interdisciplinary research on problems in health. And so it's networking, and then it's looking for ways for resources that are trying to facilitate people to get together. And I think those are both great mechanisms for me as a faculty member, and then also for students that want to get involved with this now too. The other thing, if some of you are pre-med and you decide you might not want to go to the MD track, your different friends that are going into pre-med, or if you're in grad school and you're friends with some people that are in med school, at the same university, those are connections you want to continue too, because then later on when you want to work with that great clinician, it's your friend from college, and then you can get together that way too. So to stay connected.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing I'd add to that is another reason why Gore likes to hire PhDs is because those 3 little letters are after your name, and they open up doors. So physicians it's silly, and I have been called Dr. Hurley in forever. Maybe when I talk to United, they call me Dr. Hurley, but I check that PhD at the door normally. But with a physician, I absolutely have my business card. It just opens the door and makes them respect what I'm saying about how this product can help their patients. They get bombarded by industry trying to sell them another product, and having someone they can trust makes a difference. So a little of the nuances of working with physicians, I work with vascular surgeons that, they are highly skilled, highly educated, super smart people, and with that comes a little bit of an ego that you have to also learn to work with. And I'm sure you've had that experience that, there's a finessing to a relationship, particularly when I'm trying to sell you something. So, yeah, it's about relationships. A lot of that is contacts, right? That's what we keep going back to.
And then to respect their time. So we're all busy, but a lot of these clinicians, they're as uber busy as you could imagine. And so to just, we're understanding that they have constraints with things coming up with the emergency room or this long surgery or this or that, and to work around that to still make those connections happen on the schedule as you can. Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to stay at the same microphone. You've been standing for a while. There you go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I'm a third-year PhD student at University of Southern California. And my question is directed to Dr. Green. And it's a question, how you mentioned earlier that there are some people going into academia who go into kind of more of the teaching focus, right? That route. And personally for me, I think I'm leaning more towards that. So I was wondering, like, maybe you or like maybe some colleagues that you know at Johns Hopkins, do you know if there are any resources that I personally can utilize in order to kind of verify whether this is the right path for me, or maybe it's more the research route?
So what do you mean by verify?
Like, as in, currently I feel like I'm interested more into teaching just because I've been TAing this semester and it seems very interesting, but do you know if there's like any additional like resources, maybe like, do they teach kind of as like kind of like on the side at like a community college or?
Well, so at your institution there could be resources for teaching that could be available to you as a TA or for faculty. And so you could go there where you could learn different ways of teaching, how to integrate technology in teaching, the way different people learn. The other thing is, if you're interested in different areas as an undergrad or a grad student, you use your electives or take an extra class in the area you're interested in. It's totally fine. So if you want to take a class or two in education, or if you want to take a class or two in business, those are skills that you'll use that course a lot more than you're using your transport class in the future, depending on what career job you do. So I think, to make yourself available at those resources at your institution, BMES also has different career guidance things. When you're looking for a faculty job, there's different mailing lists you can subscribe to. There's this Academic Keys one, and there's some other ones where they'll send you each month all the different jobs that have opened up in BME. And you'll see that, it'll cover a wide spectrum. It'll be a lot of US jobs, but also international ones. It'll be ones that'll be at medical centers. It'll be ones that are at smaller liberal arts schools, all different places that are looking for BMEs. And so you could find those teaching roles there. Another thing that I think you heard a little bit is how there can be this luck and movement and different things that happen in your career path. So it's fine. Your decision doesn't have to be one that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It's this is what I want to do next. And it could be that is what you'll end up doing the whole time, or it might be that you do that for a while and then you want to move into something else. So I don't think it's something that in terms of the decision of having some sort of verified 100% this is what I need to do next. It's sort of go with your gut, go with what's fun, and then when you do these interviews and you learn more about the institution and you talk to other people that are in that job, let's say at a certain teaching university or at a company, and you ask them different questions about what they're doing, and usually there's repeated visits and interviews, and you see, like, is this a match? Do I see myself here? And then you'll know, if it's a fit. And then if it's something, though, that you have another opportunity where, someone comes and tells you this compelling opportunity, even though you think you're happy in the job you have, well, you go and try, the other one out. And so it's fine to move around. So if you're interested in it, I would say reach out to local resources or BMES resources or other kinds of national resources to learn who to contact, what those opportunities are, and then go for it. Another advantage if you want to do a more teaching position is it doesn't require this long postdoc that may be more typical of a research-based position. So you'll have to, you publish your thesis, you have a few papers, and that's very strong. You don't need to have pages and pages of papers on your CV in order to get that type of position.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
My name is Morgan Alters. I'm a senior in BME at Florida Gulf Coast University. My question would be for Nicole primarily. You would all maybe know an answer though. If I was potentially pursuing graduate school, but I don't necessarily want to go into academia, the majority of what you hear from people is when you go to grad school, they either do academia or continue research. How difficult was it for you to go into the industry?
So difficult from the university, like from Georgia Tech's point of view, or difficult?
From your point of view, sometimes I'm told that either it can hinder you or that most people are assumed to just go right into academia.
Right, so I'd say the difficulty is that you have a PhD in a very specialized area, and so most people assume that you want to continue to do research, which I think the majority of BMES students want to, right? Want to go into academia? Well, it might be changing now.
So I don't know if you have the statistics, but I think most students go into industry. They don't go into academia. So it's something that, it's big chunk do, but that's something that's changed over the last 30 years. It used to be you got a PhD to become a professor, go into academia, and that's just not the case anymore. The great thing with a PhD is, especially a PhD in biomedical engineering, is you can literally do just about anything. So whether it's starting a business, joining any kind of business, you have the skills, the problem solving, the quantitative skills, the communication skills. Like, you're really the perfect employee that then you join wherever a new role is, and you'll get trained for those specific nuances of that job, but it's really how you think, how you can stick with the problem. A PhD shows that you can take a problem, stick with it, persist with it, and then get to its solution. And as long as you know how to persist, it's like in a boxing match, you don't lose if you get knocked down, you lose if you don't stand up again. Well, unless you keep getting knocked down a lot of times. But basically it's the getting up and the persisting. And so when you do a PhD, almost everyone, you're going to hit a wall. And so what do you do when you hit that wall? And how do you get through that? And then there'll be another wall, and how do you get through that? And if you can go through all these walls, especially in a really complicated area like biomedical engineering, nothing's going to really stand in your way. And so I think most graduates do go into industry, but industry spans everything from the basic research to applied research to business development, sales, marketing, communication, IT stuff. Like it could be anything. It could be working at a stock company and doing financial stuff and computer modeling. Like, you really have the skills to go almost anywhere. So I don't think it's a deterrent at all. I think it makes you very marketable. And I'm sure, like, in terms of the kinds of people, a PhD in BME is someone that can find a job. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing I'd add to that is it was hard to find my first job. I mean, Joe mentioned it too. The part is that you're expensive, right? If they could hire an undergrad to do the same role, they are. But that being said, there's jobs out there. You just have to be persistent and keep looking and build up your contacts and talk to the people at the career fair today. Exchange business cards. Even if you're in year 2, start now. It's okay. Companies wait. So Gore will wait for somebody for the product specialist role. But there's lots of opportunities. And I know people in the patent office, I know people at NIH. So it's not just industry.
Well, there's also, if anyone's interested in policy, there's these really interesting fellowships that then you can work in DC with senators or congresspeople on science policy, and then you could go into the kinds of roles where you get to help shape that. And so that could be exciting for some people after their PhD. You can also do things at the FDA and regulatory. There's places like NIST in terms of standards. And then I know other people that go into things like science writing. The people that are editors at Science and Nature, or full-time staff people that are PhD scientists that then read and write and review science and share it like that. Patents, a lot of patent law places, they'll pay for you to get your law degree while you get paid a good salary as a patent lawyer with just your PhD as the credential to start. So there's a lot of other kinds of career paths.
I just want to add, we cannot find science writers, medical writers, scientific writers. We can't find them. Everybody's looking for them. So you're going to run into opportunities that you may not expect. My point is, you're all going to get jobs. It may not be the job that you thought it was going to be, but you're going to end up with opportunities, and as you both have said, you make those decisions as you get to those crossroads. But writing as an example, I've got probably 4 or 5 different clients right now looking for people. I can't find them, and I do it all day long. I can't find them. So I'm not saying you should become a scientific writer. I'm just saying there are other opportunities you may not have thought about. And by walking around and talking, going to the vendors, you're going to get ideas. You're going to build your network. You're going to see them next year if you come back. You're starting to build those relationships now. So sorry to interrupt you.
Hi, I'm Shannon Larson. I'm a junior undergraduate student at the University of Maryland. And my question was primarily for Nicole, and it also has to do with trying to figure out how much schooling you might need to get into industry. So I kind of have the opposite question of, can I get a job, like for most jobs in the industry with just an undergraduate degree, or like maybe just an undergraduate plus master's? Or do you need a PhD, like for the Gore specialist?
So that's a unique role. So I would say yes, if you want to be a product specialist at Gore, you should probably get a PhD. But beyond that, no, you don't have to get a PhD. There's plenty of roles out there. When I graduated, though, I would have likely ended up in a lab job. People didn't understand what that degree was, and I really didn't feel like I had the right background to do something I really wanted to do, so I felt like I needed that next step of higher education. But no, you absolutely do not. Being in grad school, I worked with undergrads on my projects, and most people don't go to grad school and they find jobs. I'd say it's just you then have to build up that experience in order to get the next role, right? When I apply for a job, they look at my PhD as 5 years of experience. So it's kind of the same thing. You just have to build your experience in a different way.
Okay.
I'd say that being said, one of the issues sometimes with the bachelor level degree BME and finding a job is that it's hard for an employer to know what that means, because it can vary by some different institutions. So if it's something where you have the opportunity to maybe do a concentration in the area that you most are interested in and what you want to do in that job, that concentration might be taking other classes in computer science and electrical engineering, if that's what you'd like to do, or it might be taking things in biomaterials and cell engineering, if that's what you like to do. That'll help in your resume, and then when you meet and try to match with the employer, that you have these extra skill sets and concentration and focus and depth in this area that is the skills that employer is looking for, rather than just sort of amorphous BME, because it can mean different things. So I would say to have the focus in the area that you like, and then to highlight that in the resume and when you do your networking, and that'll help a lot with that job search.
Do internships, do co-ops, whatever you can to get on the job experience that sets yourself apart. Take advantage of all those opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Supriya, and I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Minnesota. My question is mostly for Dr. Green. I'm also leaning towards maybe thinking about a career in teaching, and I have an undergrad and master's degree in electrical engineering and then switched into biomedical engineering. My question for you is, since most BME PhDs seem to come from very diverse backgrounds, some with bachelors in maybe just physics, maybe biology, maybe chemical engineering, and they all learn new things during their PhDs, and their projects are mostly in a niche area where they do something super specialized. What advice would you give to someone like me thinking about teaching on how to decide what to teach?
So when you're searching for a job in general, if you don't have a strong constraint for a certain reason, I would say then don't have that constraint. So for example, if you're looking to teach, I would apply to positions that are for BME as well as to your undergraduate degree. If you feel you could teach those classes because you had them, you understand them, I would apply to both. And it's a kind of thing where sometimes the same university might have opportunities in both. You could even apply to both. But a lot of times it's different universities have slots in different departments in different years. And so it just lets you get out there. But in general, it's fine to, if it's how you were trained through undergraduate or master's in a certain discipline, you can certainly have your PhD in a related discipline and then be in the home department that you were initially trained in. And then on the other side, BME is something where a lot of institutions are just starting BME degrees. And so if you look at a lot of faculty, it's rare to see the majority have degrees in BME. A lot of it's all over the place. It could be electrical engineering, chemical engineering, physics, biology, chemistry. So certainly, even if you have a PhD in another degree, if you're interested in BME, you can apply to be a professor of BME. You just need to have a story to say why your work's related to BME, but I'm sure it is.
Thank you.
Other questions? I think we exhausted our time. So let's thank our panel. And our next session is BME Careers in Academia at 9:15. So maybe, Supriya, you want to stay because then you'll get more answers to your questions. Thank you again. Have a great day and enjoy BMES. Be a member.